Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, England's Cotswolds, where history and nature collide. Presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Andy Woodward. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you for being here with us today. Andy, take it away.
Thanks, Rob. A good English evening to everyone. A good day to everyone else. Thanks for joining us, folks. Bit of a different, maybe a slightly different approach to today's program. I think possibly because the Cotswolds has been controlled by human activity for such a long time. I just wanted to sort of really take you away from the absolutely wonderful natural habitats that NatHab look after and come us back to this very beautiful managed landscape that I live in. I've lived here 30 years now. You'd have to drag me away kicking and screaming to move away from this part of the world. And it's my absolute pleasure to share it with so many NatHab guests. Very quickly, let's just move on here. So yes, my name's Andy. I've been leading, this is my third year of being on the Cotswold tours and looking forward to 2026 already. So yeah, that's me in the posh gear on the screen there. So realistically, where are we and what do we represent? So the Cotswolds is called an area of outstanding natural beauty. It's very much, it is a park. It's about 100 miles long. It's about 60 miles wide. And if you can see the little red outline on the map there, it's this sort of dark green area that's represented. Runs from Bath in the south to nearly Stratford-on-Avon on the north. So two great literary connections there from Jane Austen up to William Shakespeare. And it is this very much this an AONB, as we call them, is kind of one down the pecking order from a national park. Wherever you are in the states around the world, I'm sure you're all familiar with national parks, and they generally are very associated with wilderness and untouched habitats. This is entirely different. This is a controlled and lived in park, but it's now a very protected area. The AONBs were created in 1947. There are 46 of them in the UK, or actually in England, so not including the Welsh and the Scottish ones. And the Cotswold, being one of the bigger ones, was created in 1960, or designated in 1966. And as it says there on the screen, the primary purpose of an AONB designation is to conserve and enhance the natural beauty of the landscape. Basically, you can't move or build anything around here without vast amounts of permission, and you have to use the local stone and the local materials. Some of you who've been on my trips will know I can be a little bit dry, a little bit cynical. And as I say to people, they were changed to national landscapes in 2024, and they probably paid some marketing guy gazillions to come up with that change. So it's now the national landscape rather than the area of outstanding natural beauty. Our tour, what I keep bringing this back to is actually what we do on our tour. So our tour starts in Oxford and heads all the way across to the west to the River Severn estuary. Here on the left side, where we visit the Slimbridge Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, which is hugely important to the World Wildlife Fund, as it was created by Sir Peter Scott, son of Scott of the Antarctic, and Sir Peter actually drew the World Wildlife Fund panda that you see every single day. And the only thing they've changed since he did it was they took the claws off the panda. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. So this is where we are. And what I'll try and do is bring how the landscape has been influenced over all this time, all the thousands of years, and bring it back to what we actually do on our tour. So what makes the Cotswold landscape so special is we are sitting on one great big chunk of Oolitic Jurassic limestone, and it rises in the west and it falls away to the east. So by the time it reaches Oxford, it's kind of properly disappearing under the ground. And Oolitic because the micrograins look like little baby eggs. So it's a very soft stone. It's easy to work. It has this beautiful honey-coloured texture that is so prevalent in all the photos you see of the buildings in the Cotswolds. And if you go either side of the Cotswolds, you move away from this honey-coloured stone building work to structures generally made out of wood. And the old wattle and door techniques of that. And that's because that was the available building material. Here, it's the stone. Every village had its own little quarry. There is now industrially done, of course. And it's crisscrossed by these wonderful rivers that we explore. The River Windrush, the River Colne, the River Eye that runs through the Slaughters and Bourton on the Water. What it does lead to, and I'll just very quickly throw this in, is, and why the WWF are even actually in the Cotswolds, is we have these amazing, what are called chalk streams. Here they're limestone streams, but sedimentary rock, and they produce this beautiful, clean running water. Although here in the UK we haven't had much of that since about March, the driest spring on record. And there's 200 of these little rivers, and most of them appear in southern England. Very tiny number appear in France, northern Europe as well. But the World Wildlife Fund here actually contributes to wildlife and wetlands trusts that are throughout the area, and they're helping the promotion of fish, salmon, trout, animals, voles, newts, herons. We actually had a heron sitting on a pond just up the road here this morning, which was absolutely beautiful. And just very occasionally we get to see a kingfisher, but few and far between. But a great sighting when it actually happens. So I'm going to take you through kind of the centuries. So when was this area first occupied, and when did it first start to be influenced by people? Fundamentally, this was the southernmost point of the last ice age, about 10,000 years ago, and once the ice retreated, people could practically walk across from Europe. There was a land bridge, and the Neolithic people came into this area and were met by huge open wild woods that grew through this whole area. Those woodlands were cleared for agriculture, and animals, grains were grown, and even flax and hemp, so they could actually make ropes and useful things like that. One of the areas that is just up the road from where I live is something called the Rollright Stones. As you can see, this doesn't look a lot like Stonehenge, as if you're familiar with Stonehenge. And the main reason for this is it's a very similar age, but Stonehenge is made out of rock hard granite, and this is made of soft limestone, to which even the shepherds were famously used to chip bits off to actually use as good luck charms. But there are 37 stones, all arranged in a celestially aligned, and people have been coming here for 4,000 years. The circle was actually there's a burial site as part of this, which is dated to 4,000 years ago, and they reckon these stones were put in about 2,500 years ago. It's a funny little place, and they actually say that if you walk around clockwise and count the stones, and then walk around anti-clockwise and count stones, you never arrive at the same figure. So you're more than welcome to come here and try. I've tried. I'm yet to make them add up. So it's absolutely how it was. So this is how things proceeded for a couple of thousand years ago. And then nearly 2,000 years ago, some guys called the Romans arrived. They first tried to invade Britain in about AD 43, and then they arrived here about 43 BC, had a failed mission, and then nearly 100 years later, they rocked up in around 50 AD with 50,000 men and decided to take over the UK. What they couldn't decide, or what they couldn't work out back then, was that there was this very northern land where I'm sitting tonight. We're on about the 52nd parallel north, and we have these amazing warming currents from the Gulf Stream, and they couldn't work out why this green, abundant land existed so far north when everywhere else was so cold. And from that, they started getting organised. They took over very amicably. It was basically do it the hard way. We'll leave you in your fort and starve you out, or we can get on and we can trade together and work together. And it created this terrific environment. And what was the key to success of all of this was Britain started to feed the northern armies of the Roman Empire. And from that, you had this amazing wealth that was generated. In the middle of the Cotswolds here is a city called Cirencester. Back then it was called Corinium, and it had 50,000 people living in Corinium by about AD 300. It was actually the same size as London. London now has about 8 or 9 million people, and Cirencester still has 50,000 people living there. So nothing much has changed for them, but a lot's changed for London. The Romans bought sheep, and one of the most important things that we haven't mentioned is that cotes means shepherd's pasture, sheepland, and a wold is a rolling hill. So we have this amazing area called the Cotswolds, rolling hills, sheep's hills, basically. There are other wolds around the UK, the Lincolnshire wolds, the Yorkshire wolds, very similar geographically. But this is special because it's not designated by a specific name. It's just a general, it's just generally for the whole area. So they introduced large herds of sheep, and they also started growing grains, and we went to feed the armies. So this is what we did. Chedworth is one of our actual visits, and it was a fabulous Roman villa. What makes it very unique is it was part of very early architectural finds, and when they went and said they went for a dig, they really did go in with picks and shovels. So a lot of the small items you'd expect to find on modern digs and layers of soil and what it tells you just went. But it was very, very famous. Charles Darwin actually came and visited Chedworth very early in the 1800s. And actually even one of the US presidents, JFK, came here while he was on holiday. But it was while his dad was ambassador to the UK during the Second World War. So he didn't come out here. But it does have, as you can see on the picture on the right, it does have stunning mosaics. It has bathhouses, it has underfloor heating, and these villas were actually not occupied by Romans. They were actually occupied by very rich British people who were enjoying the wealth and prosperity that the Romans actually brought to them. And the top left picture is kind of how Chedworth would have looked around 300 AD at the height of its prosperity. Family house, the head family house on the top left, and then the agricultural workers and barns moving down the valley. It's a stunning location, very much the as you'd expect in the Cotswolds, and realistically, nothing's changed for 2,000 years in that part of the world. So the Roman Empire collapsed in a hurry in the early 4th century, and mostly because the Brits couldn't sell their grain and their sheep to anyone anymore. The economy absolutely was decimated. So we went into our dark ages, and not a lot happened. Well, people got on with living. That's what really happened. So what we're going to do now is jump to the Saxons, who also came across another invasion. They started very much organizing their agriculture, and what that picture shows is the leftovers of ancient ploughing techniques called ridge and furrow, or plough and furrow. And because the ploughs had these one-bladed, very heavy ploughs, they pushed the soil to the sides into these ridges. The structure of people of the locals was started to being very organized, and a family would be given or work what was called a hide, and a hide was somewhere between 30 to 120 acres, and that was considered, the 120 acres was on very poor soil, 30 acres on very rich soil, and that was considered enough to feed a family for a year. So if you managed your space carefully, then you could comfortably live for a year. A phrase that we still use today, certainly in cricket and probably in baseball, is that a field close to a village was called an infield, and a field away from a village was called the outfield. And as you can imagine, that's something that's very much still in use today, but perhaps more in a sporting context than anything else. So those are Saxons, and then from there, the UK was invaded by the Normans. I'm probably teaching you all how to suck eggs here, but it's how these people influenced our architecture. This is actually the side door to Bampton Church, which is one of our visits, which we'll talk about later, because it's now used, or it was used in the filming of Downton Abbey, which some of you may have heard of. It's actually the church and the village they used. But what actually is represented here was how this area was expanding so rapidly, and the building techniques were getting so good, even for the 11th century. There was a horrible typo there, so I apologise for that. Most agricultural land that is still used today was already in use by this time, and it sort of wafted and waned a little bit by population, but fundamentally. So when William the Conqueror came over here in 1066 and took over, he decided in 1085 to do a survey of everything he owned, of the people and the lands, and he created this thing called the Domesday Book. And the town that I still live in now is in the Domesday Book. It was called Sheepwash Town. It's now called Shipston. And that's so sheep. Anything in this area, we'll see in the middle of Oxford. There's ship lanes. There's lots of towns and villages around here, Shipton, Shipston, that are all related to sheep. There's no boats around here, I can promise you. It's all sheep. So we were in the Domesday Book. It was the lowest fording point of the River Stour that we live on, and this little picture on the right here just shows absolute classic Norman architecture, which was circular archways and this very crenulated, this really crenulated architecture. So as I say, tonight's a bit different because I'm taking you away from nature a bit, but kind of telling you a little bit of a story. So from the Normans, we kind of move forward a couple of hundred years to the 14th century, 1300s, and two things were absolutely hugely important. The sheep industry was going absolutely crazy, and the wool on the sheep was then already being made into cloth, and that cloth was being expanded all over Europe. The fella on the right there is a Cotswold lion. It's now a rare breed sheep, but back in the day, it had a very fine wool on it, which made beautiful clothes. If the wool went to the continent, as raw wool, it was taxed. It had a tariff on it. I don't know. That seems to have been a word back in the news recently for some reason. So the Cotswold lion, they were already weaving and making cloth. And these buildings on the left, a place we dropped by called Arlington Row, in a little very famous village called Byberry. And these were monks' weaving houses, and very unusually for the 1400s, they actually had dormer windows upstairs, and that was to let in extra light. It's hard to believe, but those were big windows for the day. It sits against a nature reserve called Rack Isle, where they would have originally have dried their wools. And all of these towns are on fast-running rivers, which were needed to clean the wool and wash the cloth. Byberry is famous for the reason Byberry has become so famous is a number of reasons. Arlington Row itself. In the 1930s, Emperor Hirohito of Japan came here, so every Japanese tourist that's ever visited the UK has to come here on a pilgrimage. And thirdly, some guy called Henry Ford tried to buy this row of cottages and move it to his museum in Michigan. He was politely told to go away and leave the cottages where they were, but it does make for a good story. So this was cracking on through the 14th century, huge explosion of the wool trade, and then boom, the Black Death. This is a beautiful little ancient Saxon church called St. Oswald's that we walk past. This is the Windrush Valley in the main picture here, and we actually walk along this path as part of our tour. And it has original 14th century artwork in the church, which is very interesting to see. Now this is in a village called Widford, but you might notice something. There's no houses there, and that's because when the Black Death hit, if all or a vast percentage of the population caught the Black Death, they had a very simple solution, and that was just to burn the village down. And that's what's happened. And then you'll see there's no stone left, and that's because when they rebuilt the village, rather than going to the quarry to shape new stone, it's much easier to borrow somebody else's, particularly when they're not there, and stop you from doing it. What it did mean was there was a sizable contraction of all the arable lands, and a lot of it started to grow back to being woodland, and you can see some of that still in the background of the picture there. Moving forward again to a little bit forward, we move up to the 1600s, the 17th century, and again the wool trade was moving along very nicely, and then it gets hit this time by it gets hugely influenced by wars. Early part of the 1600s was the 30 Years' War, with the French. Most things come back to the French in some way. So we have a great love-hate relationship with them. I'm only joking. We love them and their wine. And then through the English Civil War, the Cotswolds was hugely influential in with both the armies of the Royalists and the Parliamentarians. And basically, when you've got armies running around hungry and cold, then you can imagine they take most of the livestock and the stores of grain and similar. So again, it left this area very devastated. One of the things I did want to just highlight is the top picture here is the beautiful town of Chipping Campden. Chipping means market, so it was a hugely important market town, still is. And in the picture here, you can see what's known as one of the wool churches. This is St James, and from the wool churches, they are vastly more opulent and affluent and sizable than you'd expect for a relatively small town. But again, it was the wool money that was expanding it. What I wanted to show you underneath that is actually the remnants of Camden Manor, built by Baptist Hicks. You can see a sketch of the original grandeur of the manor, but he was so adamant that he didn't want parliamentarian troops staying in his house. He actually burnt it down, and that bit of the ruin you can see on the right is all that remains. But he was so he just didn't want anyone trashing his house, so he wouldn't let them, so he burned it down. So from the 17th century, moving into the 18th century, the people were moving away. People were moving into the cities and looking for work. So again, a lot of this area started to return to wildwood, particularly on the escarpment. The escarpment is shown here below the Broadway Tower. We walk. It's another place we walk to. It's quite a drop. It's about 700-foot drop into the valley there. That's the Severn Valley in the Vale of Evesham. These days, 90% of all the asparagus is grown in that valley down there in the UK. So anyone visiting in May and June will generally see lots of asparagus on the menus because it's just come from down the road, literally. The Broadway Tower itself is a folly. It has no functional or practical purpose whatsoever, apart from improving a magnificent view by an extra 80 feet or so. It was built by the Earl of Coventry for his wife, and if you look it up, it basically, she wanted somewhere to say she could see her house from here, and that's what she ended up with. It was a love gesture from her husband, and that's what she ended up with. As we move into the 19th and 20th centuries, I'll just sort of wrap up here with a couple of slides. You're now into people creating beautiful gardens and in this case, an arboretum of huge importance, which people now enjoy. The Westonbirt Arboretum was started in 1829 by a guy called Robert Holford. He was a very wealthy man. He made all his money sponsoring or financing the London sewerage system that cleared all the muck out of the River Thames. There is a Northern English saying, where there's muck, there's brass. And in this case, he was absolutely right. He made lots of money on it. But he started this arboretum and it had expanded. It's now it's about 1,000 acres. It has 2,500 species of trees. His son, George, who continued it, was a very close friend of a guy called Ernest Wilson, who was one of the great plant collectors from China. So there's lots of different varieties here. There's actually 2,500 species of tree and we spend an afternoon here in Western Burt. In the spring, there's the rhododendrons and the azaleas are absolutely spectacular, as some of you may have already seen. And in the autumn, the colours of the trees, mostly deciduous trees, so the leaves are coming down, but as you can imagine, the autumn colours are similarly spectacular. Ironically, as part of the Ice Age retreat, across this piece of land is a glacial moraine that was left of acidic soil. So you actually get the acers and the rhododendrons growing very, very well here in an area which, being limestone, is generally very alkaline. So it does actually lead through. And I just wanted, for the ladies, I just wanted to apologise. On the bottom right are actually three giant redwoods. Ironically, in the UK now, there reports said that there are now twice as many redwoods in the UK as there are in California, and these were all planted as ornamental saplings back in the mid 1800s. And these three are called the Three Sisters, and they were George Holford's sisters. And very sadly, for the ladies, Robert planted them for his three daughters in recognition of them, and then gave his entire estate to his son George. So, ladies, I'm afraid you got three trees, and gentlemen, he got the whole estate and the money and the £1 million inheritance, both of his uncle and another £1 million from his son. And this is in about 1860, so sizable amounts. So that's Western Burt, another one of our visits. And then just next door to Western Burt, near the town of Tetbury, is a little place called, oh, hang on, I'm going to jump a slide and come back to it. So just down the road from Western Burt is Highgrove. It's the King's private house. And when he moved there he bought the house in 1984. It's his private house. It is not state owned. So he has done all the work on it over 40 years now. And he loves it so much, he actually even travelled back to there on the night of his coronation recently. So he loves to get back to there. It's a modest, for a king, it's a fairly modest house, but it's his sanctuary, and he does let people come and see his gardens. He has worked tirelessly on them. They are absolutely stunning, as people who, if any of you have already been, will know. It moves through the year, has wild meadow flowers. Bottom left there is this very remarkable area called a stumpery. So we had a couple of bad hurricanes in the late 80s, early 90s here in the UK, uprooted a lot of very ancient trees. But he took their stumps and had them moved to Highgrove, and they're now covered in moss and ferns and homes for animals and bugs and the like. Absolutely superb. He's created an azalea path, which isn't in these pictures. It's a very selective process trying to find pictures of Highgrove, as you can imagine. The one on the top left is actually is a new one, and it was a garden that was shown at the Chelsea Flower Show about 10 or 15 years ago now. But it's influenced by Southern Europe, as you can see, with the cedars and the mosaic fountain there. And again, it's absolutely stunning. The little house on that picture on the left was in a holly tree and was originally known as Holyrood House, which is a reference to the Royal Palace in Edinburgh. But it was where William and Harry loved to play when they were kids. And then I'm just going to jump back to another really beautiful garden that we visit on our last day. And this is Hidcote Gardens. It's owned by the National Trust, but it was created by an American, a guy called Lawrence Johnson. He bought it in 1907. The house is older, but has been extended, and is not part of the tour. He was very much part of the arts and crafts movement, or heavily influenced by the arts and crafts movement that had moved to the Cotswolds, and particularly Broadway, and Chipping Campden in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And he set out to create these beautiful, beautiful gardens. And the key to it is that very much they're garden rooms, and each one has a different color and a uh, um, different take. But the each room actually allows you to see into the next room, gives you a taste and a glimpse of what's coming up, and then it's crisscrossed by a couple of these quite large vistas. So the one you can see top right, top left, takes you through to what's called Heaven's Gate, and has a infinity view out across the Cotswolds. But yeah, he was a very he didn't actually work at all during his lifetime. He was a great soldier. He was wounded several times in the First World War, and he actually escaped France, where he was living at the beginning of the Second World War, by stealing an ambulance, and with his friends they drove it across the Spanish border and got away. So, and as it says at the bottom there, this was the first garden to actually ever be uh, opened by given to the National Trust. They're usually associated with historic houses, and they weren't sure that people would actually come and visit a garden, but now it's one of their finest gardens. And on our tour, we wrap up our week of touring with a wee glass of something fizzy and cold at the end of it, just to celebrate our week. So I'm going to drop back past Highgrove here, and really that's half an hour run round, or 40-minute run round our Cotswold tour, perhaps just showing you how this is actually a human influenced environment, much more so than maybe some of our other NatHab destinations. So hopefully that all came across very well to you, and Rob, thank you very much.
All right, Andy, thank you so much. Now, before we dive into the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that if you do have questions, then you can submit them via the question field in your control panel. You just go to the upper right-hand corner and you see those three lines there. Go ahead and click on those. It'll drop down a menu. You go to questions and go ahead and pop them in there. So, Andy, did you say that Johnson House was a private residence?
Yeah, Lawrence Johnson owned it up until he passed away. Oh, which way am I going? Wrong way. Sorry, I've lost you for a moment. Oh, you've put me. Yes, the Hidcot House was owned by him. I think he passed in the 1950s, and it was given to the National Trust to run. And yeah, he was part of a Baltimore banking family. His mum very subtly married two very rich men at different times, and ironically, I think it was his great aunt was the niece of President Buchanan, and because Buchanan wasn't married, when he came to the White House, he needed a hostess, and he actually invited his niece. And up until that point, all the wives of the president have been known as Lady Washington or whatever it happened to be, and they had to come up with a new title for her. And his great aunt was the very first lady. There you go, completely random fact.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So, can we talk about the trip for a little bit? Can you talk about
Sure.
how many days the trip runs?
Yeah, it starts on a Saturday it's an 8-day trip. This year it has been running starting on a Saturday. Next year's trip starts on a Wednesday. It starts in the city of Oxford with a tour of the beautiful historic town and colleges of Oxford. And then we head out into the Cotswolds, and it runs through to effectively wraps up on the following Friday or Tuesday. So what's that? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, so it's a sort of 6-7 day trip, and the last day we move you graciously back to the airport or onto our other trips. They usually go back to back with our Scotland trip. So if people want to do both trips, Cotswolds and Scotland, they can do both simultaneously.
Great, thank you so much. So, would you call this a physically demanding trip? Do I have to be in great shape to be on it?
You don't have to be on great shape. It does. We do like to do some walking. Most of the attractions include uh, a walking tour. So we may walk for a couple of hours at a time. We don't walk more than uh, 3 or 4 miles in a day. So yeah, if you're regular, if you're fairly mobile, um, then that absolutely works. But I wouldn't say. I think on the questionnaire that our guest would answer, it does ask you if you can walk 5 miles, up to 5 miles. But it's all very, very flat. There's very little hill climbing as such. Gentle slopes maybe, but no, it's not overly physically demanding. And generally, the weather here is very temperate, um, and it's mid 20s. Sorry, that's Celsius. So, it's in the 70s, low 80s. So it's quite pleasant most of the time during the season.
How many of these historical sites that you talked about today are we going to be visiting during the Cotswold trip?
Let me just think. So, yeah, we do Chedworth on the first day before doing some walking along the Windrush River Valley. The second day, we do some walking in Whiteton Woods, followed by a falconry raptor demonstration, which you physically participate in. That's held at the amazing Chavenage House, which is we don't go in there, but it's a 16th century manor house. The day after that, we do Westonbirt and Highgrove. The following day, we're at Slimbridge, and then we do the Painswick Rococo Gardens. I didn't put that into this one, but again, that is a recreation of an 18th century garden style. And then we do a bit of walking. We visit a sustainable farm program, followed by some countryside walking the next day, and then we end up at Broadway Tower, Chipping Campden, and Hidcote on the last day, but with a sheepdog trial exhibition as well. So yeah, it's activities morning, noon, and night. But I think it can be slightly different to some of the other NetHab trips where you are outdoors. You're not sitting in vehicles trying to spot safari animals or polar bears, or so it can be. Yeah, we're in and out of vehicles all day. We are wandering around.
Does the trip go to Shakespeare's home by any chance?
No, Stratford's just a little bit too far north of us. If you fancied coming in a day or so early, Oxford to Stratford's about 30 miles, 35 miles apart, and you could nip up to Stratford on Avon. Different style of architecture, Tudor buildings, the wooden timber framed housing, and also you've got the Royal Shakespeare Theatre up there as well. So yeah, you could add it. It could be a add on before or after the tour.
Would you consider this trip more of a cultural tour, or is there a wildlife sightings that are possible?
No, yeah, there is a very strong. It is a very strong wildlife side. I just, when I was asked to pick a theme for this talk, I just sort of took it in a different direction. But yeah, we particularly um, we meet local animals, see them around, the farm animals and the wild animals. We do a lot of the small birds. Um, we do we do a dawn chorus bird walk on the trip with great guy called Ed Druitt, who is the leading world authority on peregrine falcons. I mean, his knowledge of birds and local um, plants is second to none, and he does it. Yeah, so yeah, no, we are doing animals as well as history. I say I just took this in a slightly different direction this evening.
Great. Well, thank you for letting us know that, Andy. Is there one part of this trip that you would say is the most unique or exciting thing that you would like to share with us?
Oh gosh, I think for me, I mean, I think I'm doing 8 of these next year, I think. So because we move through the seasons, every some part of every trip is my favorite at a different time. Um, the the falconry experience is second to none. I say the birds fly between the guests, which is quite remarkable. At certain times of year, Slimbridge, the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust is just amazing. Uh, Another time of year, the rhododendrons in Western Burt are just second to none. Um, so it's a movable feast, as they would say. But I can assure you, I never get bored of doing it. That's the main thing. Every trip, every time is different, and with so many lovely people as well.
Well, great, Andy. Thank you so much for sharing. Unfortunately, that is going to be the last question that we do have for today. So I'd like to throw it back to you for any closing comments you may have for us.
No, I just would love to see as many of you here as absolutely possible. It is a very different environment. It's a very gentle, soft, beautiful landscape that we're so fortunate to live in. Um, it's you can hopefully this evening showed how historic it is, and it's just it's a wonderful place to be, and I hope we can see some people over next season and the season after.
Great, Andy. Thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us today. So if you are interested in information on how you can travel with NatHab, please give us a call at 800-543-8917, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay link available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We will see you next time.